Good evening to everyone. Welcome to Life with Shenita. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be tuning in. I am your guest host on tonight, Elizabeth Johnson, and I'm stepping in for Miss Shenita on today. And this is going to be an awesome time that we're going to have on today. We have a very important guest that will be coming on to share, and we want to talk to him and get to know him. And his name is Mr. Richard Orona. He's an LPC counselor from Texas. And I want y'all to know this show is going to be absolutely amazing. I was talking with him, getting to know him, and Miss Shenita has picked the right person for tonight for this amazing event that we have going on tonight. We need to deal with certain issues, as certain things during the holidays, certain mental issues that people are dealing with. And during the holidays, it's a very hard time when we are going through different situations, whether it's a loss of a loved one, or whether it's just, a job, or whether it's just, life itself. But I want to introduce my guest on tonight. His name is Mr. Richard Orona. Mr. Richard, are you there with us on tonight?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good
Hi,
evening.
Mr. Richard. How are you doing on today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. I appreciate that. How are you doing?
I am doing simply amazing. If you would please introduce us yourself and tell us a little bit about you. And then I have an icebreaker question for you as well.
Okay.
We have to do that icebreaker to kind of break up what we have going on.
Of course. So I am a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Texas. I've been licensed for about close to 15 years now.
Okay.
And so I have my private practice here, which at this point is pretty much 100% remote. I also facilitate trainings for different organizations as well. I do that maybe a couple times a month. So I'll go in and I'll talk about various soft skills for organizations, even mental health concerns, negotiations, communication. I also teach at a college level. And so I teach general psychology and I teach a lifespan development course. As far as the main focus of my profession, it's largely in treating clients with various concerns, various conditions. I work with individuals. I work with couples as well.
That's amazing.
I'm a level 3 Gottman therapist. And so what that means is that Gottman therapy is a unique format of couples counseling. It's the most scientific, empirically based approach to couples counseling that's ever been. I mean, it's an amazing approach to couples work. And like I said,
So you're a very busy person, as we can tell. You're very busy. But before we even get started with getting into your background and everybody getting to know you, I have an icebreaker question for you that I need you to answer. I want you to describe the color burgundy to someone who is blind.
Okay. And so I'm going to kind of cheat here. What I would do, if they're blind, I would give them a red grape. Okay. And then I would give them a sip of red wine. And that's kind of what I think of whenever I'm trying to put into words or
I seen you kind of squint your eyes, so you're trying to visualize that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I kind of got you.
I think that would work to help somebody get a feel for the color burgundy.
Okay. That's very, very good. And then sometimes you have to put yourself in that situation, because if you were, if you're blind, you kind of close your eyes. I kind of seen when you were squinting your eyes to kind of put yourself in that situation.
Exactly.
Very
Gives
good.
a little bit of context.
Yes, absolutely. So I have another, question for you while we get started with our dialogue on this evening. What is mental health, and why is it important, and what does it relate to optimal health?
Okay. Mental health, I think, in just kind of in a short synopsis, mental health is a combination of a couple things. I think it's how obviously how I'm feeling.
Okay.
It's how I'm thinking about the world, my environment, how I'm thinking about myself, how I'm thinking about relationships. Okay. So I think it's sort of a lens for how I engage with the world at large, on a interpersonal level. On an intrapersonal level, how I'm connecting with other people, and on an interpersonal level, how I'm thinking about myself, how I'm connected with myself. And I think people really don't think about that, how their mental health is really kind of core to how they're engaging with oneself, how they're thinking about themselves. So
And I
that's
like how
what.
you said the environment.
Mhm.
So in your environment, can you talk more about your environment? Because that's important. Your environment has something to do with your mental health. So can you
Definitely.
talk on that?
Definitely. I mean, your environment could be something as I think in the arenas that we can control, that our environment becomes sort of an offshoot of how we're feeling.
Wow.
So if my home is chaotic, if my car is
Mm,
chaotic, right, there's probably, what does that say about my value of my environment, right?
right.
And now, granted, people can get busy. That all that makes sense. But again, if a person's so busy that they can't tend to their environment, well, maybe they're not valuing time
Yeah.
management. Maybe they're not valuing themselves, right? Maybe they're feeling a little overwhelmed, right? And so your environment is a nice reflection in those arenas that we can control, a nice reflection of what's happening mental health wise.
Yeah, and your environment had when you said you're, chaotic, and if your life is chaotic, if your household is chaotic, that has something to do with your mental health, and that all of that. I kind of think of it along the lines as you need some R&R, rest and relaxation. You need to sometimes back away, and in order to engage with yourself and get yourself prepared and for what you're moving forward to.
I agree. I agree. And, in terms of mental health, people aren't taught how to take care of their mental health hygiene. And so this takes a back seat for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but I think in this day and age, people are starting to become more aware of the significance of mental health and trying to operate as optimally as we possibly can. So.
Okay. And what do you consider to be the leading causes of mental health these days that we're in right now, dealing with the pandemic and everything that we have going on? What do you consider being the leading cause of it?
Of problems in the area of mental health, I think I've been studying a lot about attribution. Okay,
Okay.
how people attribute um, causes of what's going on around them, and so I mentioned the idea of lens earlier, and
Hmm.
so lens isn't just how we look at things; it's also how we intake things, right?
Wow.
How we understand our world around us, how we understand the environment, right?
Okay.
And so uh, people's attribution style can get sort of beat up, whether it's by early childhood experiences, whether it's by we talked about the pandemic, losing a job in a pandemic. We talk, relationships. Um, that is going to impact how a person integrates and intakes information. And so in this day and age, unfortunately, there's bad news going on kind of around us all the time. There's a new variant, there's new
Yeah.
factors that are kind of beating up on us. So it's really how people ingest information, I think, largely that impacts you know the likelihood to be depressed or the likelihood to get anxious.
Right. And then do you think it's important or it's safe to say that sometimes you as a person have to recognize these symptoms? You have to recognize that there is an issue.
Definitely. I think people can get accustomed to or used to uh, the negative,
Okay.
and it just becomes their normal, and it's hard to sort of step outside of that and see that I'm not functioning in as optimal way as I can, and
Yes.
so how we're looking at things, how we're feeling about things, it just sort of becomes rutted in, and we kind of get stuck,
Right.
and it gets stronger and stronger and accumulates, and this leads to pathology or official diagnoses of anxiety or depression or something along those lines.
Okay. So now moving forward into us being in the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, the New Year is coming up. What suggestions can you give to help someone going through the holiday that's struggling with mental issues?
Okay.
Mental issues.
Okay. I would first be honest enough with oneself about what one is feeling, what that person is feeling, and so don't run from it.
Okay.
A lot of times, unfortunately, and this is so sad, but there's a stigmatization with mental health concerns, right? And so people may not want to feel weak, or they might feel ashamed, right? We're taught, men are taught to sort of be strong, right? And
Wrong. Yeah.
sometimes even some women, they're taught like you want to be strong, right? So to admit and acknowledge that I'm not feeling good, we can admit it physically, but mentally people kind of run from that. So I think
Yeah.
honesty is something that's very key.
Yeah, I like how you stated that, because sometimes you said that men feel strong and they hold it in, and I'm tough. And we as women as well, we say, I'm tough, I can handle this. On the inside, you just, you're just broke. You're just broken down. So I like how you stated that, you have to be able to know the difference of that.
I think that's important, to be able to look in the mirror and recognize that I need help, right? So honesty and accountability. And the second thing is to search out resources. There's, I mean, whatever a person is dealing with, depression, anxiety are pretty common. If a person thinks they might be wrestling with some bipolar, people have a general idea about, let's say, what bipolar is or different diagnoses are. There's a lot of resources that a person can look up. I mean, just type in symptoms, test, and you'll be able to find something. The Mayo Clinic has some wonderful resources. The National Institute of Health has some wonderful resources that people can access for free. And so you can kind of get an idea. So that way you're armed with knowledge. So that way you can reach out to different, if a person needs to speak with a clinician or maybe a pastor and say, listen, I think I have some of these issues, symptoms. And so, reaching out to others, even for guidance about how to handle that, goes a long way.
And I think it's important that we do reach out and know that there's an issue, there's a problem, and reaching out and asking for help. And that's something that we don't do. We don't ask for help. We wait until it gets, to that point where we're almost about to explode, and then there's nothing that can bring us back. So we have to recognize the signs early.
That's
and
true.
be able to get the help that we need. So I really like that.
I think that's important. Yeah.
Yes. So how can I speak to help someone with mental health problems like depression or anxiety? Because I know that when me and you were talking, depression can come on you. You don't have to take medication or anything like that. It can just be something as simple as losing your job, losing a loved one, and you go into a state of depression. So how can you tell us about that?
So in talking to somebody that you think might be struggling with depression or anxiety, um, helping them feel comfortable, sort of letting their guard down and being able to open up about what it is that they're feeling. So that way we can kind of contextualize a little bit, what's happening presently for the person. And questions help. I mean, I sort of get paid to ask people questions, and they'll, if they feel comfortable enough, they'll share the information. And so acknowledgement, kind of to the same vein of what I mentioned just a few moments ago, acknowledging and honesty is very key. Now, once I'm acknowledging and being honest, and that person is being open, what do we do with this information? Right. All right. And so you might need to help the person reach out and feel comfortable reaching out,
Mhm.
And I think at the heart of that is the idea of value.
Okay.
That a person has to value themselves enough, and sometimes the problems may seem so overwhelming or so insurmountable
Mhm.
that I'm sort of eclipsed by the problems and I can't see my value. And so, as a friend, a loved one, I can come along, sort of hold you by the hand and show you that I value you and
Mhm.
make you feel valued. So
Right.
that way I can help you see your own value and get some help.
And I think it's very important with family and friends and loved ones to be around you when you're going through these difficult times, because you need that person, that little push to say that you can make it. It's going to be okay. Instead of just sitting there in a dark place and trying to figure out, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to do? So you do need those people around. Don't you agree?
I agree 1,000%. I think we're losing that with I appreciate technology. I love technology, but there's something that's sort of distancing to
Hmm.
people because it's easier to text instead of picking up the phone and calling somebody. There's a lot of literature out there showing that we literally think differently whenever we're in someone else's presence. We
Wow.
feel different, right?
Yeah.
Our brain flows differently. So if a person is facing a problem and they're feeling, overwhelmed, they're feeling stressed out, there's opioids that are released whenever I get to problem solve and someone else is soothing me,
Right.
and just wrap an arm around me or pat me on the back and tell me it's going to be okay. I mean, there's chemical changes that occur inside the body. So being that connection is definitely a main component to uh, optimal mental health.
Right. Showing someone that you care. Showing someone you
Definitely.
care, that you're concerned about them, about what they're dealing with, is very, very important. So I'm thankful that you expounded on that. But I have a question for you that I want to know, that
Sure.
everybody wants to know, is what made you become a mental health therapist, the coach, the person that you are today? What made you become that?
Okay, okay. So I was teaching at various high schools, and I ultimately wound up in Florida. As a matter of fact, I wound up working at a behavior modification program. Okay,
Okay.
and this was a level 2 program, and so in the state of Florida, there's different tiers, and this was the lowest tier school for adolescents. Okay, and so many times people getting out of sort of adolescent prison would come to our facility before they went back to the regular school, or if they were expelled from their regular school and on their way to prison, right? So we had a mix of people that were at various journeys in the process of going through the system. Okay,
Okay.
and so these were all teenagers and predominantly young men. There were some girls. Anyways, whenever I started working there, it was a very rough around the edges facility, and by that I mean that we would have to restrain the population pretty much on a daily basis. Okay, and so it wasn't a matter of if somebody was going to be restrained; it was a matter of just when.
Right.
And it was exhausting emotionally, psychologically, for the staff, for the students. And
Wow.
so my supervisor, the executive director, he had this great idea to bring in a mental health professional,
Hmm.
and ultimately they hired somebody. And I kid you not, literally overnight it went from one, two, three restraints a day to none.
Wow.
None for a week, none for a month, none for a couple months. And I remember being fascinated by just talking. This
Mm.
therapist was able to make a difference in the lives of these kids and the lives of this facility, this agent, this particular unit. Um, and I was fascinated. And I thought, how can talking make that much of a difference? And so I started talking to the therapist, and he kind of opened my eyes to the field of mental health and the power of mental health and the power of psychotherapy, talk therapy. And so in that, I went ahead and started working on my education, my training, and ultimately my licensure. So
Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome. And do you do adults and children, or what is your how do you what is your service?
Okay, so now I largely work with adults. It's very rare that I work with children.
Okay.
Whenever I moved back to Texas and I worked in my license, I was largely working with adolescents,
Okay.
and I got sort of specialized. I had a specialized niche. I was working with children who were working through CPS, Child Protective
Child
Services,
Protective
who
Service.
had been removed from their parents.
Wow.
And so that was very difficult work, and I did that for a couple of years. But working with children that had been removed from their parents, and helping them cope with that, the attachment problems that were showing up, the behavior problems that were showing up, that's a unique population. My
Yeah.
heart really goes out to those kids, and so I got a lot of good work done with that. But I kind of got overwhelmed, and talking about mental health. I mean, I had to look in the mirror and just see that I was being impacted by that, and I had to
Wow.
make some serious choices. I mean, it's very lucrative. I felt I was doing good work, but I just wasn't able to sustain that. So I had to go a
And
different route.
how are you able to sustain that? Like you just stated, like it wore down on you. So how are you able to, balance your life and balance, your work and dealing with other, mental issues and trying to help
Sure.
others? How do you
Sure.
balance that?
So very carefully, very carefully. I like to drink a sip of bourbon from time to time, right?
Right.
And so I would literally have to stop myself and make sure that, okay, you know what, are you using alcohol as a coping mechanism?
Mm,
And so I had to be very honest with myself. I'll be kind of a little transparent here. I mean, addiction runs in my family, and so I know that those dragons sort of crawl under, can be in certain caves in my family, and so to be aware of how I was coping with things, and so being accountable, being honest, making sure that if I'm sort of holding on to something, because some of these stories were extremely powerful, very, very, very traumatizing lives that some of these children lived. And so to be honest, and not dwell, and to sort of compartmentalize, in a healthy way, to recognize that, yeah, I put on this hat, I'll be there, I'll show up, but I cannot be overrun by other people's pain and other people's problems, and that's a healthy thing.
yeah. And that's one thing that I commend you on, because you're able to, go move forward and, deal with people's issues and then move forward. But can you think of, are there, when you said holding on to, does that have something to do with that as well? Because sometimes we can be dealing with something and we just hold on to it, and it affects us in a way that, we're unable to shake it sometimes until it gets difficult, and then we can't. So does that have an effect on when we hold on to things as well?
Greatly, greatly. Uh, Being able to have a conversation with oneself about where my thoughts are going, where my emotions are going, and to be aware.
Mhm.
And that's a main component that I talk to when I'm talking to my clients and people I work with. That if you think about your day, think about how much of your day you're operating on automatic pilot, on
Mhm.
defaults, right? I mean, we don't have to think when we're driving, even whenever we're engaging with people. A lot of times we're not really sort of fully present, right? Well, how much more so does that apply to ourselves, right? And so we can sort of devolve back, revert back to old experiences, to old hurts,
Oh yeah.
old pains, right? and
Yes.
and like I mentioned those ruts earlier, so feelings, we just sort
Mhm.
of revert back to those things, and again, holding on to things and not even recognizing that's what we're doing, right? And so self-awareness, being brave enough to face some things. And sometimes that's what I help people do: adapt strategies and skills to be able to face some things, so that way they're not holding on to things.
So facing them, and dealing with the issue is sometimes is a good thing. But then
Definitely.
when you're dealing with it, you have to realize that this is helping me to get build a relationship with myself to be able to deal with these different things. So holding on and releasing, and they say release and let go.
Yeah.
That's very important. But dealing with the different things that you deal with on a daily basis, can you take us through like your daily, your day? How
Okay.
does your day even start? How do you start your day?
Okay.
In a normal
Yeah.
day?
Thank you. That's a great question. So uh, this version now, this version of my day, um, it's all about my mental health. It honestly is. Okay, so then I'll wake up and I'll devote some time to meditation, to some prayer, to some scripture reading, just to sort of set the tone for the day.
Mhm.
It's quiet. I'm usually up by 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So I can sip on a couple of cups of coffee before anybody else, before the chaos of the day of kids and all that stuff starts. And I'll usually work out. And so I try to get about an hour workout in, and really sort of push myself, because I need that. That helps
Right.
me to just stay emotionally, mentally, physically, psychologically strong, right? And honestly, I'll organize my day where I can have breaks to myself. Notice
Mm.
I haven't even talked about work. Okay, so
Okay. You
so
haven't? No.
I haven't. So my day is about me, and so that I can be there for myself, because there's no way I can be there for my family, for my clients, for my friends,
Absolutely.
unless I'm there for me. And so I intentionally start my day from that perspective. Okay, and I make sure I arrange time where I can have a break if I want to work out again, if I want to take the dog for a walk. So I intentionally arrange that. Okay, and in between there, I happen to work.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll have a couple sessions in the morning and a couple sessions in the afternoon. Occasionally, I might have a couple sessions in the evening. Okay. But again, everything is geared around my mental health, and
Absolutely.
and I think that's extremely important, and I don't think people do that enough, right? Um, so yeah, I don't know if you want to hear about some of the
Well, I commend you
concerns.
because you're telling us about your day, that you personally set your day up to where you pray and you get you together. And that's something that, even as a mental counselor, you do that. But as everyone in the world, we need to do that as well. We need to set our day. We need to set our atmosphere. We need to set, and that'll start our day off right. So starting your day off with you and getting to, yourself straight is very well. I need to take those tips from you and start my day that way as well. So that's
I,
awesome.
I think it's key. Uh, with my work, it's never sort of cookie cutter, and I might be working with a client who is telling me about a problem
Mhm.
that I might not be familiar with, right?
Wow.
And so the intricacies of what's on the other side. I'm doing all remote work now. The intricacies of what's on the other side of the screen, what the person is presenting or explaining, it could be extremely complicated, and it could be very multi-layered. And so I have to make sure that I'm in a good space mentally to listen. And what's really fascinating is one word, literally one word, how somebody says one word,
Hmm.
many times has given me a clue to
Hmm.
follow, a crumb, a nugget to follow.
Yeah.
And so I might ask about that, and that just opens a door. It's really, I think the capacity to be able to do this for a living. I really, I mean, I'm just very passionate about, and I look forward to my work. And so anyways, me sort of being in as optimal place as I can. If I'm not, it could have consequences for the person on the other side of the screen. and I don't think that's fair to them, you know.
So let me ask you a question because of the pandemic and we're doing things virtually now and you're not seeing your clients face to face. Can you tell me, like you stated, you hear that one word. What's the difference of doing it virtually now, which is our way of life now,
Mhm.
than it was doing it when they were face to face with you, when you had that person right there and they were telling you their problems? What's the differences in that?
Okay, that's a great question. Here's what the literature says is that the outcomes are the same, that there's no difference. Okay.
Okay.
On an emotional level, I think honestly it works in my favor, to my favor. Here's why. Because yes, you're not in the room with the person, but it sort of forces you to try to bridge the technology of the fact that you're not with the person. So it
Mhm.
forces me to sort of be more in tune, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got you.
Okay. Now it's nice if you can sort of, you know, if somebody is having an emotional expression, if they're crying about a prior trauma, you know, to be able to give them a Kleenex and to sort of, you know, pat them on the shoulder, that sort of thing. You know, so the obvious limitation there, you know, you lose that, but in a way, if you can kind of try to be more present to the degree that you can through the use of the camera, um, it forces a different sort of skill that I'm
Right.
learning to appreciate.
Okay.
So yeah, there is a difference, but I think I'm trying to make up for it, and I think most clinicians that are doing this sort of work at this point, they're learning new skills to try to make up for that.
Okay. And you've learned new skills in order to
Oh,
make up for
definitely,
that. So that's
definitely.
amazing because now everything is virtual, you know, doctor's visits and different things are virtual now that we have to adapt to the way of life. So I'm thankful that and knowing your answer that you're still able to engage with your clients and be able to have that one-on-one with them, even though they're virtual, not with you. So that's
Yeah.
also amazing. So us closing out 2021
Okay.
and we're with Christmas and the Thanksgiving, Christmas is around the corner and moving into the new year. What can you say to get us prepared for going into a new year?
Um, so what I do is I'm a planner. Okay.
Okay.
And I think that we have to have um, something to work for. Okay. And so whatever arena in a person's life that a person has not been happy with in 2021,
Okay.
look at where you'd like to go in 2022.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Label it.
Hmm.
I label my years. I've
Hmm.
learned this. Label your year. Okay. If it's a year, this past year, I labeled it the year of rebuilding, and I've
Okay.
rebuilt. Okay. I've rebuilt in different arenas that needed to be rebuilt. Okay. And so label your year, look at the areas that you'd like to see cultivated, that you'd like to see blossom. And now that I know what that is, what practical steps do I need to implement? And not just that, what do I have to do that's going to keep me accountable?
Wow.
Right.
Now
Right.
that's a good one because you have to be accountable for.
That's it.
I know I have to write everything down, so
Mhm.
I have it written down, but I also have to be accountable for what I write down.
Exactly.
Am I going to follow what I wrote down, or did I just write it down just to write it down? So
Exactly.
yeah, we
Exactly.
have to be accountable. And going into 2022, with different things such as, when people lost their job to the pandemic and we had to face different issues. Can you tell me how, even going into 2022, um, they say let go of some things that you were dealing with in 2021 and move forward into 2022. Is that easy? Is that something easy to do, or does it take time?
It could take time. If I could sort of, I want to say this about accountability.
Okay.
Um, get in a habit of being accountable, right? So whether that's on a daily or weekly basis, right? So then if you have something planned out, go back and look, am I missing the mark here, or am I actually working towards this? Okay.
Mhm.
And get in the habit of doing that. I think that's important. As far as letting things go, um, you know, it there's so many factors into a person's unique mental health, right?
Mhm.
People have different life experiences. They have different, childhoods. They have different value systems. They have different genes, right? Different attribution styles, right? And so, depending on what it is, that could sort of set the stage for how difficult it is to let something go.
Okay.
So it's not a one size fits all. If a person is having problems letting things go, and I'll give you an example. Whenever I'm working with a client, and we're talking about something that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago,
Okay.
um, if they're crying, I know that there's sort of, there's things there that have to be addressed, right?
Mm.
And
Okay.
so sometimes people have to be taught how to let things go. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So if people are holding on to things, it's not enough just to know that I'm doing this and that I want to let it go. I might have to seek out a method, a means, a system that shows me a protocol template to be able to release these things, you know?
Okay. Yeah, and that's so important. Releasing is important. It just takes a load off of you, and
Sure.
and it's like a weight off of you. So that's very very important. And I know that it said that we have to prepare ourselves mentally,
Mhm.
physically, and financially going into a new year. We have
Definitely.
to prepare ourselves. And someone said that they're doing that now. They're preparing themselves mentally. Physically, what do you think we can do physically to prepare ourselves going into this new year?
Um, so, again, looking at it, if if a person if a person is not happy with where they are physically, right?
Hmm.
Developing a plan. Okay. Now, it's always interesting to me that the gyms are going to be full in January. You know,
Always, I'm
it,
always
yeah,
there. I'm there
it's always.
January 1st.
But and that's great. That's great. Again, accountable. But here's the thing: what behaviors got me to the place that required me to go to the gym?
Mm,
Right?
okay.
Am I stress eating? Right?
Mm,
Am I bored eating? Right? Right. So if I'm gonna go to the gym, amen, that's great. All that, be accountable there. But if there's some underlying stuff that I have not figured out or fully addressed, that I might need to look at the bigger picture of things and see if there's some areas that have to be addressed that are impacting my physical side of things.
right. And then, like January 1st, we're there. And February 1st, we back to the same routine. So it has something to do with being accountable and staying on task. And
Definitely.
that if that's one of your goals, then let that be your goal. Don't deter from that goal and let it, move forward with it. And I
That's right.
thank you for that as well. So the conversation that we're having with mental health, and tell me, with you and your clients, do you have those clients that come back and say, thank you for helping me. You helped me with how is that process? I know that people do come back and say thank you for helping them with different issues. Like you stated, that there's people that's dealing with issues for 5 and 10 years. I mean, that's a long time to deal with something, but you never know. Everyone's different in how they deal with things. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sometimes I'll get a message from a client and they'll let me know how far they've gone since they were working with me, or they'll explain that, what, my I was able to get married again, whereas, after their first divorce they were thinking, I never want to go through that again, but they get some work done, and now they're in different places. Um, yeah, so it's always nice to hear some positives from people, and it sort of reminds me of what I'm trying to do. I tell my kids, ask me sometimes, they'll ask me, what I do, and I tell them I'm trying to fix the world one problem at a time. You know, I
Oh,
kid with
wow, I
them,
like
you know,
that.
but that's, you know, I you know, whenever I'm working with couples and there's kids involved, I sort of feel like I'm advocating on behalf of the kids. You know, um, it's easy to say that people's problems root back to their childhood, but the more I do this, the more I see that people's, you know, value systems, their outlook for themselves, how, you know, problems in their marriages kind of root back to some things that they saw growing up or how they were treated growing up, right, and so anyways, whenever I'm working with clients that have children, a couple that has children, I sort of feel like I'm trying to by default, you know, help the kids.
Right.
Because if I can help this marriage, if I can help this couple, and they can straighten some things out, that's going to immunize the children from having to go through certain things. So the way I see mental health is through a lens looking really kind of through time, especially here when I'm talking about couples. So
When you say that you deal with the couples, and I understand that you said you have a compassion for the child.
mhm.
Do the children come into the sessions when you're dealing with that, so you can kind of are they allowed to talk and express themselves during the conversation that you're having with the parents? Because I know that it's a family thing that you're doing, and whatever the parents decides ultimately affects the child. So
Sure.
do you have a time where that child talks and tells the parents how they feel? Tell us about
Okay.
that.
That's a great question. So I generally don't do family therapy. Okay,
Okay.
I used to, and I can do it, but I feel that there's a lot of moving parts to family therapy, and you can't always isolate those variables. Okay,
Right.
so what I'll do is I'll generally work with individuals,
Okay.
and I'll work with the couples. Right. Um, Whenever I'm working with couples, I'll invite them to ask their children how they feel about what's going on in the home, the vibe of the home, the rules of the home, the systems of the home, right? Even about their marriage, right? Because the parents might have, the couple might have a certain outlook about things, but those children from the
Right.
mouths of babes, right? That
From the,
and if they feel comfortable enough and honest enough, they'll get some wonderful feedback that couple won't get anywhere else, right? So it's very valuable. It's very sort of precious if they do that, and I'll invite them to do that. So in sort of a kind of a kind of shadow way, I invite the children to sort of provide feedback, not directly in the session, but sort of secondhand.
yeah, that's an impactful thing when the children are faced with it as well. So for you, with dealing with what you do every day on a daily basis, you don't take none of this stuff home. When you were in there, how do you close down your day? I know we know how you opened up your day, so how do you close down your day?
Okay, so that's again great question. So I have a routine, and I think that's important. And this is something that's sort of come about in talking to people who were largely working from home over the past, year and a half,
Hmm.
and people couldn't find that work life balance, and so having a specific routine. So I literally will close my laptop, right, and then I'll go put on some kind of lounge around clothes, right, and then I might take the dog for a walk, so I can just kind of decompress. So I have some sort of means and method to actually do that, to decompress, right? I always think of Mr. Rogers. That was a great scene when he would come in and take the shoes off, right? And he'd put his house shoes on, and he'd put his house cardigan on. And so you knew that Fred was home Fred, right? And he was gonna hang out with you, right? And so having sort of mentally and sometimes even physically that transitionary time to go from this to that.
Okay, and that's wonderful. But and what you're stating, and I really like the conversation that we're having. Someone wants to know, what are some positive mental health strategies that we can implement today to help us through the holidays? You mentioned accountability, which is so important, but is there something else that we can do?
Okay. I would make sure that stress is kept at a minimum, if completely taken off the table as much as possible. So getting the calendar out and planning what needs to be done. Right.
Okay.
You know, think about how many people wait to the last minute to do all those things that they knew all year were going to have to be taken care of.
And
Right,
they wait to the last minute.
to the last minute, right? Whether
Okay.
it's shopping, whether it's sending out invitations, whatever it is, right? That make the holiday happen, right? So then thinking very practically about time management and what I have to get done. And so if a person needs to create lists, if they need to create, I don't know, spreadsheets, if they need to set some alarms, and making sure that they're tending to those things, so that way they're not behind the eight ball. Because if when people get behind the eight ball, that's when people get stressed, right? And so being very proactive and taking some initiative to make sure that that stressors are kept as small as possible.
Okay. And I want to commend you for helping so many people from around the world. And you even helped me. I was writing down some of the little notes that you were stating. But how can people get in contact with you? Can you let the audience know how they can contact you for your services?
Sure, sure. So my website is webtherapist.org.
Okay.
Okay. And there you can find out about scheduling. I have some great tests. I mentioned some resources earlier. I have some tests for depression, for anxiety. There's some tests for couples, and so if a couple's considering couples counseling, and they're not quite sure whether couples counseling would be helpful, there's tests on there to help with that. I have another website called anxietyexpert.org.
Okay.
And with that website, there's sort of a chat bot that a person
Okay.
can walk through if they're dealing with a panic attack or intense anxiety. Anxiety has been the number one problem that I've helped people with over the past 10 years easily. And
Okay.
so because of that, I went ahead and arranged a website that specifically addresses that. So anxietyexpert.org.
Okay, and we have the website that's on the bottom of the screen, so we would share that with the
Mhm.
audience as well and get in contact with you. And you're from Texas, so you're virtual, so anybody can contact you if they need any type of services that you render. Let me ask you for one question about your family, and I know that they see you every day and they know what you do. But what's one thing about your family that you can tell us when you're working and then you have to go back and deal with your family? How do you do that at that time?
Um, Again, making sure that, and they've taught me this, to make sure that my counselor hat is
Your
not
counselor,
on. Yeah,
right?
that it's not on. Because it's so funny that they'll say things like, okay, well, you know. That I mean, it's they're kidding, but they'll say, well, yeah, I'm not a client, or something like that. They'll
Oh,
just give
that's
me a hard
yeah,
time.
that's
Yeah,
yeah. So you have to know where to take off your, like you state, your hat
yeah,
and become dad. So that's very important. I'm not a client dad,
yeah,
so that's very
yeah.
important. I know with Miss Shenita, you helped her with her brother after his loss, so that she's thankful for that and being thankful that you're on here. Can you give me some before we go off the air? Can you speak to the audience and let them know your final words, final thoughts, and give us some hope into going into this wonderful year of 2022?
Sure, sure. What I've seen, I'll tell you a story here. What I've seen is that people are stronger than they think they are, you know, and that I think that's very powerful. I think I think when push comes to shove, that we're much more resilient. It may not always feel like that, but we're much more resilient. Um, a couple summers ago, my family and I were at the arches in Utah,
Okay.
and my son told me, he said, he looked at a rock, and he said, Dad, that rock reminds me of you. And I said, why? He says because you're strong.
Mm.
And I can't remember what was going on, but I was dealing with something, and that reminded me that he sees strength in me whenever I don't always see strength in myself, right?
Wow.
And so I think people forget that yes, a person might be dealing with something, battling something, they might feel overwhelmed, but at the end of the day, they're stronger than they think they are, and I think we forget that. And so I guess if I could leave somebody with a message of hope, I think I would remind them of that. You're stronger than you think, than you know.
And it's them and loving, as I state with us, we have to love ourselves and love who we are and what we
Definitely.
stand for, and being strong is important, and thankful that your son recognized that you're strong.
Yeah.
And what did that do for you, as him telling you that you were strong? What did
I
that
can't even I can't even tell you. It just it reminded me that there are people watching, and they see things in me. My kiddos see things in me that I don't always see in myself, right? And and I just really need to hear that sort of word of encouragement, and so it just sort of kind of picked me up. So yeah, it's good. He's a good kiddo.
And I'm thankful for the conversation, um, Mr. Richard. I'm thankful for that you were able to open up, and spend this time with us this evening on mental health and what we need to do in order to deal with the issue, be accountable. And do you have a therapist?
Okay, that's a great question. So yes and no, yes and no.
Okay.
And here's why I say no, because I don't have to pay for therapy, because I have friends that are therapists,
Okay.
and I have a good friend that I talk to on a pretty regular basis, and so we sort of give each other some free therapy, and kind of help each other out.
So y'all
Um,
kind of bounce off each other. Okay.
yes, yes,
Okay.
and she, although she's my friend, she values me enough to tell me what I need to hear instead of what I want to hear. Right?
And you're receptive of that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
Okay. So
definitely.
sometimes when you have people that kind of do the same, you have to kind of, but that's great that you're receptive of that, and moving forward. So this conversation has been amazing. Your website, if you want to just tell us your website, and one other time, and where are you from?
So I'm originally from California. My father was stationed in California, and we moved to Texas whenever I was 2 years old. But I've pretty much lived all over the country. Yeah, but settled back in Fort Worth, Texas. And
Okay, Fort Worth, Texas it is. And we thank you for taking this time out of your busy schedule of helping wonderful people every day, to come on Life with Shenita and give us this opportunity to ask you questions, ask you that wonderful icebreaker that made you close your eyes and
yep,
get into the realm of being blind. So we thank you for that. And we have Mr. Richard Orona's information on the bottom for everyone to contact him, and he is open to your services. And if you need him at any time, that is amazing, and he'll be able to help you. So at this time, Mr. Richard, I want to thank you for opening up about mental health and how to get through the holidays, and thank you for also getting us prepared for 2022 as well.
excellent.
So here at Life with Shenita, as Miss Shenita would always say, I love you, but God loves you best. Make sure that you prepare yourself for 2022. Make sure you look at the signs, look at the issues, and remember that God loves you, I love you, but God loves you more. Have a wonderful evening and see you next week with Life with Shenita.